The emergency sirens blared through the corridors of the U.S. Defiant, their harsh wail mixing with the sound of boots pounding on metal floors. Captain James Walker gripped his command chair as another blast rocked the destroyer. Through the main viewport, he watched helplessly as the colony of New Haven burned. "Status report," he barked, his eyes fixed on the horrifying scene before him. "Sir, we've lost contact with 3 more colonies," Lieutenant Mary Davis reported, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "Mars Base, Europa Station, and Titan Colony. All gone dark within the last hour." The Defiant shuddered as another energy blast from the alien ships struck their shields. The massive biological vessels of the collective loomed in the darkness of space, their organic hulls pulsing with an eerie blue light. They looked less like ships and more like giant spaceborne creatures, their surfaces constantly shifting and regenerating. "Shields at 38%, Captain," the weapons officer announced. "Our weapons barely scratched their hull. It's like they're learning from each hit." Walker watched as another human destroyer, the U.S. Brave, exploded in a brilliant flash of light. His jaw clenched tight. They'd lost 6 ships in the last 20 minutes, and the collective's forces seemed endless. "Sir," Mary's voice cracked slightly, "New Haven's defense grid is failing. Population bunkers report. They report over 2 million civilians still waiting for evacuation." The bridge fell silent. 2 million people. Walker felt the weight of those lives pressing down on him like a physical force. The collected ships were positioning themselves around the colony, their organic tendrils reaching down toward the surface. "All power to forward shields," Walker commanded. "Plot a course between those ships and the colony. We'll buy them as much time as we can." The crew responded without hesitation. The Defiant surged forward, its engines straining as it positioned itself between the alien fleet and New Haven. The ship's guns blazed, pouring everything they had into the nearest collective vessel. "Sir, incoming transmission from Earth Command," Mary announced. They're ordering all surviving ships to fall back to Sol system. They're implementing Protocol Omega." Walker's blood ran cold. Protocol Omega, the last resort defensive measure. Earth was preparing for a final stand. Through the viewport, he watched as the collective ships absorbed their attacks, their hull tissue regenerating almost instantly. What damage they did manage to inflict sealed itself within minutes. It was like fighting against a living, breathing organism rather than a fleet of ships. "How many evacuation ships made it out?" Walker asked, his voice tight. 12 transports confirmed away, sir. Estimated 8,000 civilians saved." 5 years earlier, Admiral Emma Stone stood before the World Defense Council, her uniform crisp and perfect despite the late hour. The massive screens behind her showed detailed blueprints of ships, unlike anything humanity had built before. "You want us to spend half our defense budget on ships we're going to hide?" Council member Robert Thompson asked, his voice heavy with disbelief. "While our colonies need protection now." The Admiral nodded firmly. "Yes, sir. Because what's coming will overwhelm any visible defense we can build." The council chamber erupted in angry murmurs. Stone waited patiently for them to quiet down, her gray eyes steady and determined. Behind her, the screens changed to show deep space scans, strange energy readings from the edges of known space. 3 months ago, our deep space probes detected these signals, she continued. They match nothing in our database, but they're moving, growing stronger, and they're headed our way. "Speculation," another council member said dismissively. "We can't abandon our current defense plans based on unknown signals." Stone tapped her tablet, and new images appeared. They showed the remains of an alien civilization, massive ruins on a distant planet. "This is what our scouts found last month. An entire Lieutenant Thomas Reed stared at his sensor display aboard Earth's primary defense station, his eyes burning from hours of watching the endless stream of data. Around him, the command center hummed with tense activity as reports of colony attacks continued to pour in. Another wave approaching Jupiter's orbit. "Sir," he reported to Commander Wilson, 5 of their capital ships, with what looks like 20 smaller vessels. The commander nodded grimly. Earth's remaining fleet, 50 ships of various sizes, hung in defensive formation around the planet. They seemed painfully small compared to the massive collective forces bearing down on them. Wait. Reed leaned closer to his screen. There's something odd about their formation. The biological ships of the collective moved in a strange pattern, almost like a dance. Reed had been watching them for hours, and something about their movements tugged at his mind. He quickly pulled up recordings from previous battles. "Sir, I need to show you something," he called out. On the main screen, Reed displayed 3 different battles. Each showed the collective ships moving in similar patterns before attacking. "Look at this. They're not just attacking randomly. Their ships move like cells in a body." Commander Wilson's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "They're smaller ships. They're like antibodies," Reed said, his voice growing excited. "They follow a specific pattern before attacking, just like a body's immune system. And look here," he pointed to the largest ships. "These act like nerve centers, coordinating everything." Before Wilson could respond, new alarms blared through the station. The main view screen showed a massive flash of light as the collective ships emerged from faster-than-light travel much closer than expected. "All ships, battle stations," Wilson's voice boomed through the command channel. "This is not a drill. Earth Defense Fleet, engage according to Protocol Delta." The space around Earth erupted in chaos. Humanity's ships surged forward, their weapons blazing against the biological hulls of the enemy. The collective's vessels responded with their own attacks, their organic weapons sending pulses of deadly energy across space. Captain James Walker, now commanding the heavy cruiser Sentinel, led the first counterattack. "Concentrate fire on their smaller ships," his voice crackled over the command channel. "Lieutenant Reed's right. They're protecting something in those big ones." The battle raged for hours. Human ships fought with everything they had, using every trick and strategy they'd learned. But for every collective ship they managed to destroy, 2 more seemed to take its place. Back on the defense station, Reed worked frantically, analyzing the patterns he'd discovered. "Commander, the large ships, they always maintain the same distance from each other, like they can't break formation. Because they're connected," Wilson finished the thought. "Some kind of psychic link or biological network." A massive explosion lit up the view screen. 3 human destroyers had just been torn apart by a collective attack. The remaining Earth ships regrouped, forming a tighter defensive line around the planet. 15 ships lost, someone reported. Shields failing on multiple vessels. Walker's voice came through again, strained but determined. "Fall back to secondary positions. We have to protect the civilian evacuation ships." Reed watched in horror as the collective's forces pressed their advantage. Their ships moved forward in that same cellular pattern, but now he understood what he was seeing. It wasn't just a tactical formation. It was the key to their whole strategy. "Sir," he called to Wilson, "if we can disrupt the connection between their command ships, I think their whole network would fall apart." "Good theory, Lieutenant," Wilson replied grimly. "But we don't have enough firepower left to break through their defenses." As if to emphasize his point, another human ship exploded in a brilliant flash. The collective pressed closer to Earth, their massive ships casting shadows over the defense stations. "Message from Surface Command," an officer announced, her voice shaking. "They're beginning civilian evacuations to the underground bunkers. They're asking how long we can hold." Wilson looked at the tactical display, watching their forces slowly being pushed back. "Tell them we'll hold as long as we have to. Every minute we buy might make the difference." None of them knew that at that very moment, far out in deep space, quantum beacons were beginning to pulse with an urgent signal. Humanity's last hope was about to answer the call. Deep in an asteroid base at the edge of known space, Admiral Emma Stone opened her eyes as emergency lights flooded her small command room. On her screens, she watched the desperate battle for Earth unfold. Her hands, weathered by years of preparation, moved steadily over the control panel. "It's time," she said quietly. Her fingers danced across the quantum beacon controls. Throughout hidden bases and secret shipyards across space, hundreds of dormant vessels received her signal. One by one, powerful engines that hadn't fired in years roared to life. Aboard the Shadow of Dawn, Michael West stood at attention as his crew rushed to their stations. The massive flagship's quantum core hummed with power, its adaptive camouflage shifting from perfect invisibility to a dark, threatening gray. "All hands, battle stations," West announced. "This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. The Earth calls for aid, and we will answer." Back at Earth's defense station, Lieutenant Reed's sensors suddenly lit up with new readings. At first, he thought they were malfunctioning. Energy signatures appeared out of nowhere, spreading across space like stars winking into existence. "Commander Wilson," he shouted, "I'm picking up hundreds of ships appearing at the edge of our solar system. Their energy signatures, I've never seen anything like them." The collective forces seemed to notice too. Their attack pattern faltered for the first time since the battle began. The biological ships turned their sensors outward, trying to understand this new threat. Captain Walker, his ship's shields nearly depleted, watched in awe as space itself seemed to ripple. Through tears in reality, massive warships emerged. Their hulls gleamed with strange technology, and their weapons pulsed with quantum energy. "This is Admiral Emma Stone of the Earth Shadow Fleet," a strong voice announced on all channels. "To all Earth Defense Forces, hold your positions. To the collective, you were right to fear us." The Shadow of Dawn led the charge, its quantum weapons firing beams that sliced through space in impossible ways. Where they struck the collective's biological ships, the alien vessels didn't just take damage. They began to break apart at the molecular level. "It's working," Reed exclaimed, watching his sensors. "Their regeneration can't keep up with the quantum degradation." More ships emerged from hiding. Destroyers, cruisers, and massive battleships, all equipped with technology humanity had kept secret for years. They appeared from behind moons, asteroids, and even from within the sun's corona, where they had hidden using their advanced shielding. The collective's formations began to break apart. Their smaller ships scattered in confusion as the quantum weapons disrupted their network. The larger command ships tried to retreat, but found themselves caught between Earth's desperate defenders and the newly arrived Shadow Fleet. "All Earth Defense Forces," Stone's voice rang out again. "Form up with our fleet. Target the enemy command ships with everything you have. Today, we take back our colonies." Walker watched in amazement as the Shadow Fleet ships demonstrated capabilities he'd never imagined possible. They phased through enemy fire, their quantum drives allowing them to exist partially in other dimensions. Their weapons ignored conventional shields, striking directly at the biological cores of the collective's vessels. "Sir," Reed reported to Commander Wilson, his voice full of renewed hope. "The collective ships, they're retreating from Earth orbit." The Shadow Fleet pressed their advantage, their quantum weapons creating havoc in the enemy ranks. The collective's previously unbeatable biological technology proved helpless against attacks that came from multiple dimensions at once. In her command room, Admiral Stone allowed herself a small smile. 5 years of preparation, of hiding their true strength, had led to this moment. The collective had expected to find a vulnerable Earth, defended by simple ships and conventional weapons. Instead, they found humanity's full potential unleashed. "Send word to all ships," she commanded. "Phase 2 begins now. We're not just defending Earth anymore. We're taking the fight to them." The battle for Earth wasn't over, but for the first time since the war began, victory seemed possible. Humanity had played its hidden card, and the game would never be the same again. Captain James Walker stood on the bridge of his new command. After his ship was badly damaged, Admiral Stone had transferred him to the quantum destroyer Swift Justice. His crew worked efficiently at their stations, already adapting to the advanced technology around them. "Target their command ship," Walker ordered. Lieutenant Reed's data shows their weak points. Aim for the neural clusters. The Swift Justice's quantum weapons powered up, their energy making the air itself tingle. Ahead of them, one of the collective's massive biological ships tried to regenerate damage from previous attacks. Its surface rippled like living tissue attempting to heal a wound. "Sir," his weapons officer reported, "quantum torpedoes locked on target." "Fire." The torpedoes didn't travel through space. They bent it. One moment they were at the launcher. The next, they simply existed inside the collective ship. The explosion rippled through multiple dimensions at once, tearing the alien vessel apart from the inside. Across the battlefield, the Shadow Fleet pressed their advantage. Ships that had hidden for years now showed their true power. Their quantum drives let them appear and disappear at will, striking from impossible angles and vanishing before the enemy could respond. On the Earth Defense Station, Lieutenant Reed worked frantically with his sensors, mapping the collective's reaction to each attack. "Commander Wilson, their ships, they're trying to adapt to our quantum weapons, but they can't. The damage is spreading through their network." Wilson nodded grimly. "Send that data to Admiral Stone. Every advantage helps." Above Earth, the battle had transformed. The collective's once unstoppable biological ships now fought desperately against weapons they couldn't understand or counter. Their regeneration abilities, which had made them nearly invincible against conventional weapons, proved useless against quantum attacks that existed in multiple states at once. Admiral Stone's voice came through all channels. "All ships, execute Formation Delta. Target their command and control nodes. Don't let them regroup." The Shadow Fleet moved with practiced precision. They had trained for years in secret for exactly this moment. Ships phased in and out of normal space, their quantum weapons striking with surgical accuracy at the weakest points of the collective's neural network. "Enemy ships breaking formation," Reed announced, excitement in his voice. "Their coordination is failing." Walker watched from his new command as the collective's previously perfect formations fell into chaos. Without their network connection, the biological ships began acting independently, losing the coordination that had made them so deadly. "All ships, press the attack," Admiral Stone commanded. "Don't give them time to adapt." The Swift Justice dove through the battle, its quantum drives allowing it to ignore normal physics. Walker targeted another command ship, watching with satisfaction as their weapons tore through its supposedly impenetrable biological armor. "Sir," his sensor officer called out, reading massive energy fluctuations from the enemy fleet. "Something's happening." The largest of the collected ships, their central command vessel, began to pulse with strange light. Its surface writhed as it tried desperately to adapt to the quantum attacks. But instead of regenerating, it began to break apart at a fundamental level. "The quantum weapons," Reed's voice came through the command channel. "They're not just damaging their ships, they're unraveling the very foundation of their biological technology." Throughout the battle, more collective ships began to show the same symptoms. Their biological technology, unable to cope with attacks from multiple dimensions, started to fail catastrophically. Ships that could once regenerate from almost any damage now found themselves being unmade at the atomic level. Admiral Stone's voice was steady as she gave her next order. "All ships, coordinate your quantum strikes. Let's show them why they should have left Earth alone." The Shadow Fleet moved as one, their years of secret training paying off in this crucial moment. Quantum beams crossed space from multiple angles, catching the largest collective ships in a web of multi-dimensional energy. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time, the collective learned what it meant to fear human ingenuity. Their perfect biological technology, which had conquered so many worlds, meant nothing against weapons that broke the very rules of reality. Humanity had not just survived, they had changed the nature of space warfare itself. Lieutenant Reed stared at his sensor readings in disbelief. The patterns he discovered in the collective's formations were breaking down completely. Their once perfect coordination had devolved into chaos as the quantum attacks disrupted their neural network. "Commander Wilson," he called out, "I think I've found their central control node. The biggest ship. It's not just directing their forces, it's maintaining their entire network." Wilson leaned over Reed's station, studying the data. "Send these coordinates to Admiral Stone. This could be our chance to end this." Aboard the Shadow of Dawn, Admiral Stone received the data and smiled grimly. "Well done, Lieutenant," she murmured, then opened a channel to all ships. "This is Admiral Stone. All vessels, converge on these coordinates. It's time to cut off the head of the snake." The Shadow Fleet moved with deadly purpose. Years of secret training had prepared them for exactly this kind of precision strike. Captain Walker's Swift Justice led one of the attack groups, its quantum weapons fully charged. "Multiple enemy ships moving to protect their command vessel," Walker reported. "They know what we're planning." The massive collective command ship pulsed with alien energy as it tried to maintain control over its forces. Around it, smaller biological ships formed a defensive wall, sacrificing themselves to protect their nerve center. "They're scared," Admiral Stone broadcast to all ships. "For the first time in this war, they're the ones who are afraid. Show them they were right to fear us. All ships, execute attack pattern Omega." The Shadow Fleet split into 3 groups, attacking from different vectors. Their quantum drives allowed them to phase partly out of normal space, making their movements impossible to predict. The Swift Justice led the first wave, its weapons tearing holes in the collective's defensive line. "Direct hit on their outer defenses," Walker announced as his ship's quantum torpedoes struck home. "Their regeneration is failing." Lieutenant Reed watched from the defense station as the battle unfolded. The collective ships were moving erratically now, their biological technology struggling to adapt to attacks that came from multiple dimensions at once. "The disruption is spreading through their entire fleet," he reported excitedly. "Their network is collapsing." The collective command ship began to pulse with increasingly desperate energy as it tried to maintain control. Its surface writhed and twisted, biological matter attempting to reshape itself to counter the quantum attacks. But for every adaptation it made, the Shadow Fleet's weapons simply shifted to another dimension of attack. "All ships, press the advantage," Stone ordered. "Don't let them stabilize their network." Walker's Swift Justice dove through a gap in the enemy's defenses, executing a maneuver that would have been impossible without quantum drive technology. "We're in position, Admiral." Clear shot at their command center. "Take it," Stone commanded. Multiple quantum beams converged on the collective's command ship from different dimensions simultaneously. The massive vessel's biological surface began to break down at the molecular level, its regenerative abilities overwhelmed by attacks that existed in several states at once. "Their network is critically destabilized," Reed reported, his sensors showing the cascade effect spreading through the enemy fleet. "The smaller ships are losing their connection to the main control node." Throughout the battlefield, collective ships began to move without coordination. Some turned on each other, their biological programming confused by the loss of central control. Others tried to flee, their perfect formation discipline shattered. The command ship made one final attempt to restore order. Its entire surface lit up with desperate energy as it tried to reestablish control over its forces. But the Shadow Fleet pressed their attack, their quantum weapons striking from angles that shouldn't have been possible in normal space. "This is it," Stone broadcast. "All ships, full power to quantum weapons. End this now." The combined firepower of humanity's hidden fleet struck the collective command ship from every dimension at once. For a moment, the massive vessel seemed to exist in multiple states simultaneously, and then it simply came apart, its biological technology unable to maintain coherence across so many dimensional states. The effect rippled through the entire collective fleet like a shockwave of chaos. Without their central control node, the biological ships lost their perfect coordination. The mighty armada that had threatened Earth began to break apart. Humanity had found the collective's breaking point, and pushed past it. The remains of the collective command ship drifted through space, its once mighty bulk now reduced to fragments of inert biological matter. Around it, the greatest fleet ever assembled against Earth was in chaos. Without their central control node, the biological ships acted like confused animals, some fleeing blindly while others simply shut down. Captain Walker watched from the bridge of the Swift Justice as the last pockets of organized resistance crumbled. "Admiral Stone," he reported, "the enemy fleet is retreating on all fronts. Those that can still navigate are jumping out of the system. Let them go." Stone's voice came through, tired but satisfied. "Let them carry the message back to whatever's left of their hive mind. Earth is not to be underestimated." On the defense station, Lieutenant Reed worked frantically to download and analyze data from the destroyed command ship. As he sifted through the alien information, his eyes widened. "Commander Wilson," he called out, "you need to see this. I've managed to decode some of their communication logs. The reason they attacked us, it wasn't just about conquest." Wilson hurried over to Reed's station. On the screen, alien data streams translated into human language. "They were afraid," Reed explained. "Their scans showed our technological progress, especially in quantum physics. They attacked because their projections showed that within 10 years we would have surpassed them completely." Admiral Stone's flagship, the Shadow of Dawn, moved through the debris field of battle. Her voice broadcast to all ships, both the Shadow Fleet and Earth's surviving defense forces. "All vessels, begin search and rescue operations. I want every human survivor found and recovered. Then we start planning our counterattack. We're taking back our colonies." The next few hours saw intense activity as human ships recovered escape pods and rescued crew from damaged vessels. The Swift Justice found the remains of Walker's old ship, the Defiant, and managed to rescue 30 crew members who had made it to emergency pods. In her command room, Admiral Stone received the translated data from Lieutenant Reed. She read it carefully, a small smile forming on her tired face. "5 years," she murmured. "We hid our strength for 5 years, and they still knew what we could become. They were right to be afraid." The quantum beacons throughout space pulsed one last time, but now they carried a different message. Not a call to arms, but a signal of victory. Humanity had not just survived. They had proven themselves capable of defeating the greatest threat they had ever faced. Commander Wilson assembled his staff on the defense station. Latest reports confirm the collective forces are in full retreat across all colonies. The quantum weapons did more than just defeat their ships. They proved their entire biological technology has a critical weakness. They can't adapt to attacks that exist in multiple dimensions. "And we're the only ones who have this technology," Reed added. "The collective's own data confirms it. They've never encountered anything like our quantum weapons before." Captain Walker stood on his bridge, watching Earth rotate peacefully below. The planet showed some scars from the battle, but it had survived. More than survived. It had proven itself stronger than anyone could have imagined. "Message from Admiral Stone," his communications officer announced. "All ships to maintain battle readiness. Phase 2 begins tomorrow. We're going to liberate every human colony they took from us." Walker nodded, thinking of New Haven and all the other colonies they'd lost. But now they had the means to take them back. Humanity had kept its greatest weapons secret until the perfect moment, and in doing so, they'd changed the balance of power in the galaxy. As the Earth's sun rose over the horizon, casting light on the battle-scarred ships of humanity's combined fleet, Admiral Stone made one final broadcast. "To all ships and stations, what we achieved today wasn't just a victory in battle. We proved that humanity's greatest strength isn't our weapons or our technology. It's our ability to plan, to prepare, to work together in secret for years toward a single goal." The collective thought they were attacking a divided, vulnerable species. Instead, they found humanity united and ready. Remember this day, not just as the day we won a battle, but as the day humanity proved itself ready for the stars. The war wasn't over, But its course had changed forever. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, and they were here to stay.